Why is it that the more you try to control your life, the more it slips through your fingers? You draw up meticulous plans. You set alarms. You create intricate systems. You declare a total war on chaos, believing that with enough effort, you can finally force the world into a state of predictable order. Yet, the chaos always wins. It seeps through the cracks of your most structured days, manifesting as a persistent, low-grade anxiety, a bone-deep exhaustion, and the gnawing, pervasive sense that you are merely a passenger in your own existence. You have been taught to believe the problem is external, that the enemy is your demanding job, your complicated relationships, your endless list of obligations. You operate under the deeply ingrained assumption that with the right strategy, or a more disciplined will, you can finally tame the unruly nature of the world. This fundamental belief, this core misunderstanding of where the battle is truly being fought, is the very source of your suffering. The external chaos you see is not the cause of your distress. It is a mirror. It is a perfect, unflinching projection of a far deeper, more significant disorganization that resides within the hidden architecture of your own psyche. The life you are so desperately trying to manage is not the one detailed on your calendar. It is the vast, uncharted territory you refuse to look at within yourself. But this sensation of being at war, of being adrift on a sea of your own making, has a specific origin, a tangible force operating in the shadows of your mind. And today, we are going to name it. Comment, I seek my totality to begin this journey. Hack 2, the archetypal journey through the psyche. Typal block 2, the guide and the true territory. To navigate this internal landscape, you need a map and a guide. The philosopher Allan serves as that guide, offering a perspective that radically reframes your struggle. He taught that the relentless attempt to control life with the conscious, willing mind, the part of you that you call I, the ego, is a fool's errand. This ego is the architect of your plans, the general in your war against chaos. Yet, its power is profoundly overestimated. You have been trained to believe this small, rational faculty is the master of your psychological house, when it is, in fact, merely the anxious butler, polishing the silverware while the foundations of the mansion are shifting beneath its feet. Your exhaustion is the direct result of this butler trying to command the very earth upon which the house is built. This is the first truth you must accept. The psyche, the totality of your being, is not a simple hierarchy with the ego at its peak. It is a vast and ancient ecosystem. Allan often used the metaphor of an ocean to describe this reality. Your conscious ego is but a small, sunlit island on the surface of this immense, dark sea. Below the surface lies the unconscious, a realm of powerful currents, ancient archetypes, and submerged energies that dictate the weather on your little island. Your anxiety, your sense of being overwhelmed, is the tidal wave from this deep ocean crashing against the shores of your conscious awareness. You cannot command these tides. You cannot build a wall high enough to keep them out. The attempt to do so is the very definition of psychological suffering. The first step in organizing your life, therefore, is to humbly acknowledge the severe limitations of the ego's control. This recognition is not an admission of defeat, but the beginning of true wisdom. It is the moment you stop trying to shout commands at the storm and instead learn to read the winds and respect the currents. The journey inward requires you to shift your focus from the island of the ego to the vast ocean of the unconscious that surrounds and sustains it. This is the real territory where your life is being shaped. The chaos you perceive externally is not a random assault. It is a coherent weather pattern originating from these hidden depths. To find order, you must stop managing the effects on the surface and descend into the causal realm below. This is where the real work begins, not by reinforcing the ego's control, but by exploring what lies beyond its fragile borders. Block 3, the revelation of the antagonist, the shadow. If your ego is not in control, then what is driving the chaos? What is the unseen force that consistently undermines your best-laid plans and floods your days with anxiety? The answer lies in the most potent and misunderstood archetype within the human psyche, the shadow. Allan drawing from the deep well of analytical psychology, understood that the shadow is the container for every part of yourself that you have disowned. It is the repository for your anger, your envy, your laziness, your vulnerability, your irrational desires, every trait your conscious ego has deemed unacceptable, shameful, or weak. You were taught to sever these parts from your identity, to lock them away in the basement of your mind, in the pursuit of becoming a good or successful person. This was a grave error. What is repressed does not simply vanish, it gathers strength in the darkness. The energy you expend to keep these traits hidden is the very energy that fuels their destructive power. The shadow, denied a legitimate place in your conscious life, does not die. It projects itself outward. That infuriatingly incompetent colleague, that unreliable friend who always lets you down, the sudden and inexplicable system failure right before a deadline. These are not merely random external events. They are your own disowned shadow, knocking on the door of your reality. They are pieces of you, cast out and now returning as external fate. You believe you are fighting for order against a chaotic world, but you are engaged in a civil war against the exiled parts of your own being. This revelation is the absolute midpoint of your journey. The problem is not your life's lack of organization. The problem is your psyche's lack of integration. The persistent disorder you face is a symptom, not the disease. The disease is fragmentation, the splitting of your whole self into an acceptable ego and a rejected shadow. All your efforts to control the external have failed because you have been fighting a phantom. The true antagonist is not the world's chaos, but your own internal division. To find peace, you must turn away from the mirror of the world and finally face the disowned self that is casting the reflection. The war on chaos ends now, and the work of integration begins. Turner Block 4:1. The ceasing of hostilities. The first practical step on this path is a radical one. You must declare a ceasefire. Your lifelong war against external disorder has been a proxy war against your own shadow, and it has been utterly exhausting. Every time you berate yourself for your procrastination, you are attacking a disowned part of your psyche. Every time you rage against the world's unpredictability, you are raging against the aspects of your own nature that refuse to conform to the ego's rigid, sterile ideals. Allan Watts spoke of the profound wisdom of muddy water. If you desire clarity, you do not achieve it by stirring the water more violently. You simply let it be. The stirring, the frantic effort to fix, is the source of the turbidity. You must now apply this principle to your inner world. This requires a conscious act of non-resistance. It means that when you feel an impulse of laziness, you do not immediately crush it with guilt or force yourself into productivity. Instead, you observe it with curiosity. What is this part of you trying to communicate? Perhaps it is a deep need for rest that your tyrannical ego has long denied. When you feel a surge of irrational anger, you do not suppress it or immediately act it out. You create a space to simply acknowledge its presence without judgment. This is not the same as condoning destructive behavior. It is the act of collecting data about your own hidden nature. You are allowing the raw material of your psyche to surface without condemnation. This stillness is not surrender. It is a strategy. You are not giving in to chaos. You are creating the necessary psychological silence for the contents of your unconscious to reveal themselves without distortion. For years, your ego has been shouting, planning, and struggling, making it impossible to hear the quieter, more profound truths from within. By ceasing hostilities, you allow the silt of your inner turmoil to settle. Only then can you begin to see what lies at the bottom of your own psychic waters. Only in this quiet observation can you begin to distinguish the monster you imagined from the wounded part of you that actually exists. This stillness is the sacred space where integration becomes possible. Time Block 5:2. The withdrawal of projections. The second step requires you to perform a delicate but essential psychological operation, the withdrawal of your projections. Look closely at the primary sources of frustration and chaos in your life. Pinpoint the specific people whose behavior irritates you beyond reason. Identify the recurring situations that drain your energy and sabotage your efforts. These are not random annoyances. They are signposts pointing directly back to your own shadow. The shadow is a masterful ventriloquist, and its favorite puppets are the people and circumstances around you. The intense emotional reaction you have, the charge, is the key. It signals that you are not reacting to the external reality alone, but to a disowned piece of yourself that this reality has activated. Now, you must begin the difficult work of taking your power back. The profound laziness you despise in a family member, could it be a reflection of your own unacknowledged, desperate need for rest and non-striving? The arrogance you cannot stand in a rival, is it a distorted mirror of your own repressed ambition, or a secret desire to be more assertive? Allan would urge you to see that the world is a canvas upon which you paint your inner state. To organize your psyche, you must stop populating the world with your own demons. You must consciously recognize that the intense irritation you feel is not truly about them. It is a vital signal from a part of *you that is crying out for attention and integration. Each external frustration thus becomes a homing beacon, a precise navigational tool guiding you back to a fragmented, lost piece of your own soul. This is the great and transformative work of individuation, to systematically own your shadow so completely that the outer world is no longer forced to play it out for you. As you integrate these aspects, you will notice a strange phenomenon. The people who once infuriated you will either change their behavior in your presence or simply drift out of your life. They are no longer needed. Their role as a screen for your projections has become obsolete. You have taken your demons back, and in doing so, you have taken the first true step toward cleaning up your world. Times Block 6-3, the dialogue with the hidden. Once you have begun to recognize the shadow's reflection in the world, the third step is to turn inward and open a direct line of communication. You cannot integrate what you do not understand. This is not a literal conversation with the spirit, but a disciplined process of active imagination. You must consciously give a voice to the parts of yourself that you have systematically silenced for your entire life. These are not abstract forces. They are living, feeling dynamics within your psyche. They have needs, fears, and wisdom born of their exile. Your task is to set aside a time and a quiet space to listen to what they have been trying to tell you through the destructive language of symptoms and sabotage. Begin by focusing on a specific aspect of your shadow. Consider your procrastination. Instead of fighting it, ask it, what are you trying to protect me from? What are you afraid of? Perhaps its true message is not, I am lazy, but I am terrified of failing at this task because my self-worth is tied to it. Or consider your anger. Ask it, what boundary has been violated? What do you need to protect? Perhaps its core need is not to create conflict, but to establish the personal sovereignty that your overly compliant ego has given away. You must approach these repressed archetypal forces not as enemies to be vanquished, but as neglected children or wounded animals trapped in the basement of your psyche. Through this internal dialogue, a profound transformation begins to occur. The antagonist slowly reveals itself to be a misunderstood guide. The saboteur becomes a source of invaluable information about your deepest needs and truths. The parts of you that have been rattling the foundations of your life are not monstrous. They are simply primitive and desperate to be heard. They have been using the only tools they have, creating chaos, projecting onto others, engineering failure, to get your attention. By turning your conscious, compassionate attention toward them, you begin the process of healing and taming. You are not negotiating with a demon. You are finally listening to the lost parts of your own soul. Block 7-4. Confronting the shadow's destructive power. The fourth step requires you to look unflinchingly at the consequences of a neglected shadow. Understanding the cost of this inner division is essential to fuel your commitment to the difficult work of integration. An unacknowledged shadow does not remain dormant. It is the hidden engine of self-sabotage, the invisible architect of your most painful and recurring life patterns. That promotion you were perfect for, which you inexplicably botched at the last minute, that promising relationship you destroyed with a sudden, irrational act, these are not accidents. They are the work of a shadow, desperate for attention, willing to burn down the entire house of your conscious life just to be seen in the light of the flames. This destructive power manifests in subtle and overt ways. It is the chronic procrastination that keeps you from your true potential, a manifestation of a disowned fear of success or failure. It is the attraction to toxic partners or friends who embody the very traits you deny in yourself, forcing you into a painful, daily confrontation with your own reflection. Allan taught that nature does not tolerate a vacuum. When you create a void in your own identity by disowning essential parts of your humanity, the universe will rush to fill that void for you, often in the most challenging ways imaginable. The chaos in your life is not a punishment, it is a diagnostic tool, precisely indicating the areas of your psyche that are most fragmented and in need of healing. Contemplating this is not an exercise in self-flagellation. It is not meant to induce guilt, but to cultivate a profound sense of responsibility and urgency. The pain, the anxiety, the recurring failures, these are not evidence of your inadequacy. They are the cries of a vital part of your being that has been left to suffer in darkness. The destructive patterns in your life are a measure of your shadow's desperation. Recognizing this transforms your perspective entirely. You are not a victim of a chaotic world. You are the steward of a divided inner kingdom, and the chaos is a civil war that only you have the power to end by bringing your lost people home. Block 8. 5. Unlocking the Shadow's Creative Gold. The fifth and most empowering step is the discovery of the treasure that lies hidden within the very darkness you have feared. The great secret of the psyche, as taught by thinkers from Jung to Watts, is that the shadow is not just a container of negativity. It is a repository of immense, repressed psychic energy. It holds your undeveloped potential, your raw creativity, your primal power, and your connection to the deepest, most authentic parts of your instinctual nature. In your effort to be civilized and good, you have not just cut away your flaws, you have cut away a vast source of your own vitality. Integrating the shadow is the process of reclaiming this lost power. This is a profoundly alchemical concept. You must understand that every negative trait you have exiled holds the seed of a corresponding strength. The ferocious anger you have suppressed, once integrated and refined, becomes the energy for setting powerful boundaries and pursuing your goals with unwavering conviction. The profound vulnerability you have hidden, when owned and consciously expressed, becomes the key to deep, authentic connection with others. Even the laziness you so despise is a gateway to the wisdom of restorative being, a quality that, as Allan Watts would argue, our frantic, goal-obsessed culture has completely forgotten. The shadow contains the gold that the ego has thrown away. The goal of this work, therefore, is not to become a perfect, sanitized version of yourself. It is to become a whole and formidable one. By facing and integrating your shadow, you stop wasting enormous amounts of life force on the internal battle of repression. That reclaimed energy becomes available to you. Fuel for your creative work, for building a meaningful life, for navigating the world with the depth and resilience your ego alone could never provide. You are not just cleaning up a mess, you are recovering lost treasure. You are bringing online a source of power that can finally transform your existence from a state of anxious striving into one of authentic, grounded creation. Night Maze Block 9, the climax of comprehension, individuation. Here, at the culmination of this internal journey, we arrive at the central, transformative revelation. The goal was never to defeat the shadow. The objective was never to achieve a life of pure, sterile, ego-driven order. Such a life would not be whole. It would be an amputation. The true aim, the climax of this entire psychological process, is integration. It is the sacred, alchemical union of the conscious and the unconscious, the ego and the shadow, the light and the dark within you. It is the profound realization that these opposing forces were never meant to be at war. They are the two essential poles that, when brought into balance, generate the energy of a complete human life. This process of union has a name: individuation. It is the journey of becoming an individual, no longer divided against yourself. To be individuated is to become a large enough psychological container to hold the vast contradictions of your own nature without shattering. You can be both assertive and vulnerable, both disciplined and spontaneous, both rational and instinctual. You are no longer the brittle, anxious ego, terrified of any internal impulse that threatens its control. You become the dynamic, resilient self, the organizing principle at the core of your being that can harmoniously contain these opposites. The chaos of your inner world does not disappear. It is transformed into a dynamic, creative tension. This inner integration is the source of all true external order. As Allan Watts so elegantly expressed, you learn to dance with the uncertain, flowing nature of existence instead of trying to straighten the river. Your center of gravity shifts permanently. You no longer operate from the frantic periphery of the ego, but from the calm, centered core of the self. From this place, life begins to organize itself around you in a new and harmonious way. The right people appear. The toxic situations fall away. You do not force this order upon the world. You cultivate a profound order within your own psyche, and the world, which is nothing but a mirror, has no choice but to reflect your newfound inner coherence. You have now arrived at the end of this map, but at the true beginning of your journey. The war is over. The relentless, exhausting battle against the chaos of the external world has been revealed for what it always was: a profound misunderstanding, a fight against a reflection in a mirror. You are no longer a victim of your unconscious impulses, tossed on the turbulent waves of your own hidden nature. Through this descent, you have ceased to be the anxious ego, desperately trying to command the tides, and have begun the transformation into the self, the calm, centered core that can contain the ocean itself. By ceasing hostilities, by withdrawing your projections, by opening a dialogue with the shadow, you have initiated the sacred work of alchemy. You have learned the ultimate truth that Allan so often pointed to. The shadow was never the enemy to be vanquished, but the exiled source of immense power, creativity, and authenticity. The goal you so desperately sought in external validation and rigid control was always waiting for you in the darkness you were taught to fear. This is not a final destination. It is the adoption of a new way of being. Individuation is a continuous, living process of becoming more of who you truly are, no longer divided, but whole. You now possess the tools. You hold the compass. The responsibility, and the profound power that comes with it, is now yours. You are no longer forcing order onto life. You are cultivating the inner coherence from which all true, lasting order naturally springs. Your totality awaits you. If this message resonated with your search, subscribe to the channel to deepen your journey. Share this knowledge with another person who needs to find their own path. And to continue your exploration into the psyche's architecture, click the video on your screen now.